Hello and welcome to today's podcast. So, welcome back. Thank you for tuning in. And today's podcast again is on my own. Rowan has still got his exams, so it's just me, and I'm going to be talking about a topic that is coming up a lot at the moment, and it's something that natural guys and girls struggle with. Well, we've all probably struggled with at some point of our lifting careers or in our physique development careers, and that is lack of appetite, okay? And this is something that happens to most of us at some point when we're trying to pursue scale weight increases over a period of time that normally entails that we've been in a calorie surplus for a long period of time. Our appetite will really kind of just go missing. And this is very often the limiting factor in one of the limiting factors in natural guys and girls' ability to actually grow muscle, because if you can't overcome your loss of appetite, you're really going to struggle to put the food away that's necessary for you to actually increase your scale weight over time. Because if your scale weight is not increasing, are you actually gaining muscle? Probably not. Of course, there could be some recomposition effects or something along those lines, but realistically, we need to see a linear progression of scale weight alongside your performance to kind of be touching, making sure we cover all the bases that you are actually putting on new tissue. And that's probably why you're trying to eat so much food, is to put on new tissue and perform your best in the gym. So there's a few tips that we can implement. I hate that word. People say that word all the time, implement. Like, you don't implement a squares bar, you just eat a squares bar. No one in mind. But sorry, that was a tangent. And there's a few things that we can do to kind of help us with our appetite. Of course, the first thing is just try and eat as much as you can relative to your goal. And at some point, you probably will have to think about you will have to kind of move away from the feeling of needing to be hungry to eat, because our hunger hormones will very quickly kind of suppress themselves when we've got enough food. Especially when we're progressing body weight, leptin and ghrelin, they'll be kind of pretty sweet. They won't be signaling for us to be super hungry, because obviously there's an abundance of food, so they don't need to be doing that. So the first thing is make smart food choices. And this is tricky because I do have a big emphasis on health in what I do here, and all with our clients throughout the kind of gaining phase, we'll be looking at their micronutrition, how is their mineral and nutrient intake across the phase, because arguably we need that nailed so that you're in a good place to recover, and not just from an immune standpoint but from kind of a just basic cellular standpoint. But you need to start making smart food choices, and the main thing with this is if you're still eating 200 grams of oats a day and you're struggling with your appetite, you can make simple changes there that will benefit you in terms of your satiation. If you're still holding on to really high fiber foods like oats, certain things like that you know are super satiating, you're probably better off rotating them out for foods that are easier to digest. And they really will kind of set you up better, because realistically during the gaining phase, carbohydrates will be the things that are driving up, less so fat content. So you'll be looking at whey and rotate out foods that fill you up a lot, save them for when you're dieting, and then move in foods that you know you can put away. Another thing that you could look at doing is reducing your fiber intake. And again, this is a little bit contradictory to the healthy person in me saying we need a good fiber intake to support digestive health, and so on and so forth. Yes, we do, but you could look at moving that towards the lower end of the threshold, just so we know that, because we know that fiber fills us up, okay? And if we have so much fiber, we really will just be filling ourselves up for not real much benefit over a certain point. And if the success of your phase dictates on you increasing body weight and increasing your calories over time, having exponentially high amounts of fiber probably isn't going to serve you that well. So I'd be looking at kind of shaving off maybe 10 grams here or there. The rule of thumb is around 10 grams per 1,000 calories. I wouldn't necessarily go too much below that, but you could experiment and trial different levels of fiber across different periods, and use this to dictate where you go next. So if you drop your fiber intake and it report that your kind of digestive function gets worse, increase your fiber a little bit. If you find that 25 grams per day is perfect for you, but you're also still hungry from it, like that's absolutely perfect. It will involve a little bit of kind of data collection and a little bit of an analytical process. It's not just gonna be like, right, here's a number, aim for it. I would just potentially look at, where am I at now? Is it really high? Yes or no? If it's super high, look at how you can change that. If it's not super high, go to some different points, because we don't want to be dropping fiber too low for obvious reasons. Next is to be nailing carbohydrate-dense foods. And I did say this earlier, chances are that your carbohydrates are higher than anything else. Because we were wanting to drive those up during the off season, and through any season for that matter. We want to keep carbs as high as possible so that we can keep performance as high as possible. Our body's main fuel source, none of this keto nonsense. So what you need to be thinking about is, where can I get carbohydrates easily and for very little effort? Because that's the thing, is like, when it becomes a huge amount of effort, it soon becomes too much friction for you to overcome, and you potentially think about skipping those meals or not eating this food and blah, 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 blah. So carbohydrate dense foods, you could be looking at high GI foods. Of course, like GI has been, like glycemic index that is, has been a little bit debunked, so you don't necessarily have to get kind of married to it, but you could look at that index and see what foods enter the bloodstream quickly, because they tend to be foods that are quite easily digestible. And therefore, if you have them in decent amounts, they'll have a high amount of carbohydrate. So that would then support you in increasing your carbohydrate intake over time. Go-tos for my clients is like, just get your cereals in, look for things that are rice-based, so quote-unquote rice cakes, squares, bars, and of course, like, there is the crux that this isn't necessarily the healthiest thing to be doing, plowing yourself with all these kind of sugars and so on and so forth. But if you are somewhat trained and you are a relatively fit individual that's training in the gym a lot, you need to worry a little bit less about sugar. But then again, it links back to the goal. Like, what is the goal? If the goal is for you to put on more muscle, then you need to be getting these calories in, or you will not be growing, or you will not be moving the right direction in the scales. So increasing calorie or carbohydrate dense foods so that you can drive up your overall calorie and carbohydrate intake would be beneficial. And I do think you should just be looking around the supermarkets, looking at things. For our clients, we have a presentation that we give them that gives them like foods that are super high in carbohydrate, and also gives them prices and stuff so they can work out what works within their budget and works within their schedule, because there's no point saying to someone who works a busy 9 to 5 and who's in meetings all day to be kind of eating squares bars every 5 minutes, when you might be able to ask them to be drinking a Lucozade whilst they're at work, or so on and so forth. It's little things like that. How can you keep yourself ticking along so that you don't get to the end of the day and you've got like 400 grams of carbs to hit, and that's just going to be very unrealistic for you. Next up we have is to optimize your digestion, and this links quite a lot to the previous points, in that a lot of the metrics that we'll be playing with here can impact your digestion overall, because we don't want that going in the red. We want you to be in the best position to digest during your off season and during your dieting phase, but predominantly when calories get lower, we feel, well, I've found anecdotally that digestion's got a little bit better just through less food volume. But when food goes up, digestion can get a little bit worse because there's just so much food volume. You're never really giving your digestive tract a rest. So you do need to be thinking about how you can make this as optimal as you can. Like, you could be looking at nutritional interventions, lifestyle interventions, supplementary interventions. It needs to be like a multi-pronged attack to nailing your digestion. The easiest ones is to kind of, from a nutritional standpoint, is to make sure that you are getting a decent balance of different foods. Again, this links back to, it can be very easy to just eat the same stuff. Make sure you're getting a good variety of things and things that do support gut health. In terms of a lifestyle factors, you could be looking at how are you eating. Like, make sure you are sitting down when you eat, try and be mindful, chew your food, so that the digestion starts pretty early on in the digestive tract. Of course, it starts with your eyes, but if we're not chewing our food properly, it gives our stomach a lot to do later on down the line. So that would be how I'd approach it from lifestyle and nutritional intervention. In terms of a supplementational intervention, you could be looking at a digestive enzyme. That'd probably be my last resort. Not many people need these, but you would want something with some digestive acids in it. And again, this is completely kind of trial and error. I've used them in the past. I think it was like ox bile acid, something like that, for a period where I had poor digestion. Of course, I don't have great digestion now because of my IBS. Well, I've nailed it now, so I have, but I try to stay away from the supplements and try and do it through a nutritional intervention, just because that's how I like to operate. So you could look at experimenting with a supplement that is going to give you a good amount of kind of enzymes, but you probably could cover your bases nutritionally as opposed to spending like 30 quid on a supplement. In terms of supplements again, you could look at using supplements to just support you hit that carbohydrate intake. So there is a lot of carb powders on the market that will help you. They won't help them out of purpose, but they can help you, okay? Like I said, carbohydrate is going to be high, so supplements in terms of carbohydrate powders are probably going to be a good bet because you can have those during your workouts, and you can then be pushing that up to anywhere around 90 grams of carbs throughout the session, which involves very little digestive demand because you'll be drinking water throughout the session anyway. So by adding in these 90 grams of carbs, you really are just going to be sipping back and not necessarily noticing that you're adding to your calorie total for the day and your carbohydrate total for the day. So this is something that I would use with clients a lot, especially when they're like, I can't eat any more food, I can't eat any more rice, I can't have another bagel, I can't have a squares bar. Right, now let's try this supplement. You're going to have 30 grams of highly branched cyclic progesterone to start. That's 30 grams extra of carb. That's so many calories. We're going to progress that over the weeks. By the end of your training or your push-up phase, you could be around the 90 to 100 grams of carbs intra-workout that you're not even like, they're not even touching the side because they just go into the system so quickly, very easy to digest. You don't notice them at all. So supplements can help in terms of carbohydrate powders. Of course, you could be looking at kind of playing around with where your macros are coming from, but I do think like predominantly it is just a case that you have an abundance of calories that is making your appetite low, not necessarily where those calories are coming from, whether it's carbohydrate or fats. Of course, you could potentially look at pulling protein down a little bit if you're super satiated, but I would always err on slightly the higher side for protein, just because I would like to cover all my bases as a physique athlete and the importance of protein in the muscle building process. So next up we have, you could, this is last resort, okay, have periods of lower volume foods or lower food periods. And I say this is last resort because if we are not eating adequate food, we're not growing, we're not progressing, we're not getting to those new body weight parameters that we need to be getting that new muscle on. So a period of lower food is going to be time away from that goal. And time away from that goal will reduce the kind of success of that goal in the long run, or the effectiveness of that goal. So by periods of lower food, I mean you could do a mini cut or just a low food period, almost like a reverse diet break, where in a diet you would normally have a diet break and you'd eat at maintenance. In this you could pretty much go back and eat a very conservative maintenance, just to give you a period of not stuffing your face, just give you a period of not having to cram food in every minute of every day. I use this with clients sometimes, but more often than not, if it's really getting to a sticking point and body fat's also quite high, I'd probably look at doing like a quick, swift mini cut because this is really a good way to drive up hunger out the other side. If you did like a 6-week mini cut, I know it's a little bit on the long side, you would find that kind of hunger would 100% go up because we'd slash food so aggressively. Out the other side, it would come up. Because your body would start responding to those lower calories. So last resort, you could look at kind of reducing food and calories for a period of time or for a shorter period of time. And the obvious one, which I can't believe I haven't spoken about, is to just reduce food volume. Like I said, at some point you're going to have to compromise health a little bit, and you don't need to be smashing like asparagus and green beans with every meal. Yes, we need to be making sure you're hitting your basic micros and minerals across the week and across the days, but at some point, if the goal is to gain weight, you need to be prioritizing calories over micros. And chances are, well, I say chances are in quotation marks because it's not always the case, that when calories are so high, you can't really not have that many macros unless you're just eating like dust for your calories. So those are my main points for managing your appetite in an off-season, because I know it's getting to a point now where most people will be struggling. They dieted for summer, they've pushed calories quite hard, weight is starting to stall, so they're looking at their calorie intake and they think something's got to go up here, but they don't have the appetite or the ability to be able to just effortlessly progress those calories, because realistically it's the effortlessly part that is key, because if it's not effortless or requires a huge amount of effort, it creates we've got burps now. You've got more friction for you to overcome, and friction just slows down kind of your processes and your ability to adhere to something. And with anything in natural physique development, adherence is key. So those are my key points. Those are ones I work with my clients a lot to kind of implement, and I've said that word again, and to make sure that we are kind of moving forward in their physique development. But that is today's podcast. So other than that, thank you for listening. Another solo one, so I hope you enjoyed it. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, give me a like, subscribe, all of those good stuff. But other than that, I hope you have a good week, and I'll see you wherever you are. Well, I won't see you. I don't know why I say that. Wherever you are in the world, have a great day, great week. I hope you are enjoying yourselves. A bit gloomy here, but I'll see you in the next podcast.